Senate will come to order. Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members and guests, would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
For which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Majors, please call the roll.
Senators Aguilar, Baumgartner, Carroll, Cook, Crowder, Donovan, Garcia, Grantham, Guzman, Heath, Hill, Hodge, Holbert, John, Johnston, Jones, Kafalis, Kerr, Lambert, Lundberg, Marble, Martinez-Jimenez, Merrifield, Neville, Newell, Roberts, Scheffel, Scott, Sonnenberg, Stedman, Tate, Todd, Ulibarri, Woods. Mr. President.
Here, 35 present, 0 absent, 0 excused. We have a quorum. Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal for Wednesday, March 16th, and that it be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted, as well as the journal. Reports of committees of reference.
March 16, 2016, Committee on Judiciary, after consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following. House Bill 1066 be referred to the Committee of the Whole, favorable recommendation. March 16, 2016, Committee on Judiciary, after consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following. House Bill 1192 be amended as follows and as so amended, prefer the Committee of the Whole, favorable recommendation, with the recommendation be placed on the consent calendar. March 16, 2016, Committee on Health and Human Services, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends following House Bill 1165 be referred to the Committee of the Whole in favor of recommendation. March 16, 2016, Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends following House Bill 1176 be referred to the Committee of the Whole in favor of recommendation, with the recommendation be placed on the consent calendar. March 16, 2016, Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends following House Bill 1157 be referred to the Committee of the Whole in favor of recommendation, with the recommendation be placed on the consent calendar. March 16, 2016, Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends following House Bill 1189 be referred to the Committee of the Whole in favor of recommendation, with the recommendation be placed on the consent calendar. March 16, 2016, Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends following Senate Bill 134 be amended as follows and now so amended before the Committee of the Whole in favor of recommendation, with the recommendation be placed on the consent calendar. March 16, 2016, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends following Senate Bill 136 be postponed indefinitely. March 16, 2016, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends following House Bill 1152 be referred to the Committee of the Whole in favor of recommendation. March 16, 2016, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends following Senate Bill 142 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. March 16, 2016, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends following Senate Bill 152 be postponed indefinitely. March 16, 2016, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends following Senate Bill 149 be referred to the Committee of the Whole in favor of recommendation.
Senate Services.
March 17, 2016, quickly printed Senate Bills 159, 160, 161, 162, and 163, Senate Resolution 3, correctly engrossed, Senate Joint Resolution 16, 17, and 18, correctly re-engrossed, Senate Bills 183 and 124, correctly re-revised, House Bills 1090, 1163, 1170, and 1193.
Second reading of bills, consent calendar.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the.
Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole for the purpose of hearing second reading of bills consent calendar.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of general orders, second reading of bills consent calendar. Senator Hill will take the chair.
The committee will come to order and the coat rule is relaxed. Mr. Majors, will you please read the title to the bill on second reading of bills consent calendar?
House Bill 1094 by Representative Doris Leonard Roberts concerning making references to the Attorney General and the Colorado Revised Statutes gender neutral.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee adopt the bill listed on the general order second reading of bills consent calendar, which includes House Bill 1094, and ask for an aye vote.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Is there any discussion? Division has been called. Will all those in the chamber please be seated? Colleagues, division has been called. The motion before the body is the adoption for all of the bill on the second reading of bills consent calendar. Will all those in favor please stand up? The chair is not in doubt. Do I need the nose still? Do I need the nose? Do I need the nose? I'm fine. The chair is not in doubt. All the bill on second reading of bills consent calendar has been adopted. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having passed one bill on the general order's second reading of bill consent calendar, it's appropriate that I move that the committee rise and report.
You've heard the motion to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee will rise and report. Right there.
The Senate will come back to order. Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has had one bill under brief consideration. Mr. Majors, will you please read the report?
March 17, 2016, Mr. President, the committee of the whole brings the reports under consideration of the following attached bill being second reading thereof makes following recommendations thereon. House Bill 1094 passed on second reading in order to revise placed on the counter for third reading and final passage.
Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the adoption of the report.
You have heard the motion. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, the report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. House Bill 1094 passed on second reading and ordered, revised, and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. General orders, second reading of bills. Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of second reading of bills calendar.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of general order, second reading of bills. Senator Hill will take the chair.
The committee will come to order and the coat rule is relaxed. Mr. Majors, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 123?
Senate Bill 123 by Senator Lundberg, Representative Singer, concerning free access for high occupancy vehicles to high occupancy vehicle and high occupancy toll lanes on state highways and in connection therewith prohibiting the Department of Transportation and the High Performance Transportation Enterprise from requiring a vehicle owner to use a switchable transponder or other device in order to travel in a high occupancy vehicle on such a lane without paying a toll.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move again, Senate Bill 123. We have already adopted the committee report, and there has been one additional amendment that has been adopted in the process of second reading on Senate Bill 123. But if I might just for a moment review for everyone what this bill is all about. It's concerning the use of HOV lanes in the state of Colorado. If you recall, the system has been radically changed by policy established by the Transportation Commission that no longer will high occupancy vehicle lanes be available for free for the motorist who has 2 or more people in their car unless, and this is the change that's already been made, unless you have purchased a switchable pass or a switchable transponder. And the bill initially said, let's go back to the old system. Now, the amendment that was placed on the bill, which Senator Jones sponsored and I supported, did make some modifications to that, and I would be most pleased if Senator Jones could explain that. But let me just give you the main context of this, and that is, thus far, the change in policy is, okay, HOV free lane use is only allowed on those lanes that are designated for that if you now purchase a switchable pass transponder. Next year, we are told that the policy will also make it a 3+ system where you need 3 people in the car. So here's what has effectively happened, and we've had some discussion. We pulled this from the second reading about 3 weeks ago and have had some extensive discussions with the Department of Transportation and related entities on this. And they tell us that the HOV lanes that have been in Denver on north part of I-25 in the Denver area have been in place for the last 20 years. They were designed to be HOV exclusively. Of course, I'm sure you're familiar with this, where they're structured in such a way that it's a 2-lane system that is changed in direction every day so as to alleviate the rush hour traffic, both coming into Denver in the morning and going out of town in the evening. Back in 1996, that was opened up, and for 10 years, that was the policy. Then in 2006, the concept of also making it a tolling lane for those vehicles where there was just one person, but they're willing to pay a toll, was put in place. And so it became a bit of a revenue producing system as well. And I think that was all well and good, because it was a way to address some of the transportation funding needs that we have. Not a lot, but it did make a difference. Well, then last July is when the policy was put in place to say you can only use the HOV component if you first purchase this switchable pass transponder, and then you flip it back and forth. If you're HOV, you put it on one setting, and if you're using it as a toll, you only have one person, the driver in the car, then you turn that switch the other direction. When that occurred, the usage went from 60% of the traffic on those lanes being HOV to 20% of the traffic on those lanes being HOV. Why? Well, because very few people have actually gone to the trouble and the expense of obtaining one of those transponders. And understand, you have to buy the transponder, and you also have to give them some credit on their tolling system, so it becomes a shrewd tool, marketing tool for the tolling side. And I'm for tolling. I think there's an appropriate place for that. But what we're seeing is that they're regulating HOV out of existence in Colorado. I'll repeat that because this is the point. The policies that have been put in place by the Transportation Commission and implemented by the Colorado Department of Transportation are regulating HOV free lanes out of existence. The first step just dropped it from 60% usage as HOV to 20%. The next step is what we are told is going to occur next year, where it will be 3+. And by their own admission, this could restrict further 90%, which means this 20% will turn into 2%. And it will be essentially a tolling system. And those people in Colorado who thought we had a policy of allowing HOV vehicles, high occupancy vehicles, to be to have a little more access to these free-flowing lanes will be mistaken. And there are so many other problems that arise from it, but that's the main point of the bill, is to try to put the brakes on that a bit and to say, let's not allow the Transportation Commission to simply regulate this policy out of existence. I believe the General Assembly needs to be, as the constitutional representatives of the people, we need to be making these major policy decisions. And this is a major policy decision which has just been regulated out of existence. Senate Bill 123 is designed to slow that process down, to reestablish some of the responsibility that the General Assembly needs to take in this policy change. This is a big deal to a lot of people, and it should not be taken lightly. It's also complicated, I'll admit that. In talking with CDOT, they have set up such a web of contractual agreements and technical requirements that they've made it almost impossible to stop this train, but I believe the train needs to slow down so that we can maintain the policy of HOV lanes in Colorado. And I will stop my discussion at this point, and Mr. Chairman, I hope that we can get a little more description on the amendment that was placed on the bill the last time we met concerning this.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. It's also St. Welsh Day in my Welsh tie, because there are a lot of us with Celt blood in this chamber. To the bill. Hey, you got to take your Celt culture where you can get it. So I did, it was interesting I'll make a comment on a point that the sponsor made a second ago. They said, CDOT said that carpooling went from 60% on I-25 section coming into Denver, southbound from like North Glen or from Louisville, went from 60 to 20%. And they attributed that to the 60%, a lot of people cheating. In other words, one person in a car saying they're carpooling. Now, there's a camera that policed that, folks. It couldn't have been that the people don't have a transponder, switchable transponder yet, and are paying full fare from their license plate or from their transponder as a single occupant. I just found it disturbing that that kind of assertion would be made. I'm in that lane on occasion as in a carpool situation, and I didn't ever observe a single person going through the carpool lane because there was a dedicated carpool lane. But that's kind of the attitude towards this, it seems. The amendment I did put on the bill that was adopted said that transponders, these switchable transponders, not the little decal you put on your windshield, but the switchable ones shall be free. And what that did by saying they're free is that the original bill said that you don't even need a transponder. So it agreed that you do need a transponder, which is a compromise. It's a compromise that seems to be lost on CDOT and HPTE, but that was a big step, in my opinion, for them, saying, yeah, you have to have a transponder to make the system work, but it'll be free. And that's where the bill is. This is a major policy decision, folks. We were told yesterday that we were notified in a report in February 2013 that this was going to happen. Well, guess when they adopted, the Transportation Commission made the change to this policy, February of 2013. They told the Transportation Committee in our oversight hearing in mid-January that this was happening. And we said, well, that's not a good idea, several of us on the committee, and they said, well, we're doing it. And they did. So now here we are trying to fix this thing after the fact. And so a lot of people were upset about the US 36 deal because they didn't know much about it. The actual negotiation was done in secret, which public-private deals do. That's how they work. Eventually, somebody has to go off to a room where the public's not there and get the final details, and that might work on a contract of a couple $100,000, but this was a $500 million deal. I-70 in Denver's a $1.5 billion deal. If they do something into the mountains on I-70, it's going to be multiple billions of dollars. So it's not okay to do this kind of an agreement. And it seems, and they came back and said it's a 50-year deal. It's not 35 like we thought, and there's not much money for your bus rapid transit, although we thought we'd have that too when we went into this negotiation that you couldn't come and see, even observe. So that's where we are. And the carpool part of that and this transponder part of that are issues still. People carpooled for free. They were promoted. They were told they should carpool for years, and all of a sudden they have to pay for this transponder. But worse yet, finding a third person for a carpool is really hard. the CDOT's own numbers show it's like 10% of the people that do people carpool, might be a little bit more than that, more like 15. But basically, and the sponsor said this regulates two-person carpools out of existence, which in essence gets rid of almost all carpools. And so that's why this is a big issue, and it's a policy decision. This carpool decision was a policy decision that we should have known about and had a chance to weigh in on, but we didn't. So I'm supportive of the bill, and I hope you are too.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Lundberg. There's an amendment on the desk. Mr. Majors, will you please read the amendment?
Amendment L009 is Senate Bill 123 by Senator Lundberg. Amendment printed bill page 2 after line 6.
Senator Lundberg?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Amendment 9.
Senator Lundberg, to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In all of the discussions and in considerations we've been going through since we last heard of this, I have come to realize that there needs to be a little more teeth to the 3+ side of the scenario, because that really is where the big bite comes on changing the policy. And Amendment 9 doesn't remove any authority from the Highway or the Transportation Commission, but it does state that if they're going to make this change by making it a 3+ system, that they need to give the General Assembly 12 months written notice and give that notice during session so that the General Assembly has the adequate opportunity to react in a timely fashion. That's what L009 does. I ask for its adoption.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you. A question for the sponsor. Does this retroactive, the CDOT, the Transportation Commission already took formal action to not have two-person carpools anymore? Does this mean it applies to that and somebody has to let us know a year in advance?
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In answer to the question that was posed, this amendment establishes in law a new requirement for the Commission to abide by, which means if they are going to implement said policy, they need to first, after this law becomes, or this bill becomes law, they need to give notice to the General Assembly, and the soonest that could occur would be next January. So this gives them that timeline in order to implement a 3+. And here's why it's not any more prescriptive than that, is I'm not trying to micromanage their decision-making process, but I am trying to make them accountable to the people of Colorado. And this is an issue that a lot of the people of Colorado have felt that they have been undercut simply by regulation rather than due action or consideration by the General Assembly, by their direct representatives. So this simply gives the next General Assembly, or future ones if it were to occur at a later date, adequate notice and opportunity to examine this policy and determine, shall the HOV use in Colorado be restricted to such an extent that it no longer exists or not? I believe we need to look at this straight up, and that's what needs to occur. So the terms of this amendment are clearly intended to set that clock ticking next January in 2017 at the soonest, if the Commission wishes to take formal action stating in clear terms that they are moving from 2+ to 3+, and then give us formal written notice to that effect.
Senator Heath.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator, can I just clarify, and Senator, my senator friend from Louisville asked the question. Let me just ask it again and make sure I understand your reply. How does this affect the current contract that we have with Plenary at this particular point in time? Would this mean that, which as you know, specifies that we go from HOV 2 to 3 on January 1, 2017, or sooner if the triggers are triggered, the engineering triggers are triggered? How does this impact then? Does that mean that they literally would have to come in and tell us now while we're still in session, or does this not impact the plenary contract?
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In answer to the question, this resets the clock. This does require, and this is a bill today. This has to become law in order to have the force of law. But with this amendment, the clock is reset so that they would then be required to come and give the General Assembly formal written notice of this specific policy change. I know that there are some who may argue and say, oh, well, there was this little line that was intended here that told us all about it back then. I would contend that that was not a clear statement. If you were to poll all of the senators and all of the members of the House as well, I'm sure you would find that hardly any were aware of this policy change by any notice that may have been given in the past. But the intent of this is to clearly reset the clock and to state that this significant policy of essentially eliminating HOV use from the state of Colorado needs to have more process than than mere regulatory changes by a commission that is not elected by the people of Colorado.
Senator Heath.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, this is, in the world of transportation, this is probably one of the most critical issues that have come before, certainly since I've been down here. And my good friend, the Senate President, keeps reminding me that we did this to ourselves when we passed the FASTER bill back in 2009, when we basically gave the department, the executive branch, the ability to negotiate public-private partnerships. We can revisit that if we want, but the fact of the matter is that's what we did. And I think my friend, the senator from Colorado Springs, mentioned that he was here then, and that really was not the point of FASTER, which I think at that time we were trying to get money for roads and bridges, and that we probably didn't pay as much attention to this as we should have. And I will be the first to admit that. But the fact of the matter is that's what we have in front of us. That's where we are. And that's what CDOT and the High Performance Transportation Enterprise, HPTE, which was basically under CDOT, it was given the authority, if you will, to go out and negotiate public-private partnerships. And that's what we did. So much of this conversation, I think, would be relevant if we did not have a contract in place. And I can tell you, and let me just thank the bill sponsor from Loveland, who I think has been very open, and I very much appreciate the conversation we had this morning. Yesterday, we had in my office the HPTE, we had the E470 folks, we had CDOT represented, we had the governor's office represented, and we went through all of this again. So where are we? We basically have a contract with Plenary. And for those of you that have in your bill folder and with you the fiscal note, I think does a great job of explaining where we are. Because like it or not, we have a contract which was dutifully signed by the state of Colorado, which is binding on the state, as far as I can tell, unless we want to take have a lawsuit that says we we don't have a valid contract. I think that would be very difficult. So we have a contract in front of us, which basically says we are going to go from HOV 2 to 3 on January 1st, 2017, or if any one of 4 triggers happen before that, so it's before, on or before. So we have a contract in place. Let me also just put this in perspective as well. Fast tracks and the Highway 36 is basically Boulder's version of fast tracks. And my good friend from Louisville will argue that we were supposed to get a train, and we can get into all these discussions, but there's a lot of hard feeling, I think, around the fact that this was our version and everybody else got the train. But the fact of the matter is, this is our version of fast tracks, and it is a fantastic highway. If those of you had drive Highway 36 today, I estimate it's 10 minutes faster for me to get here than it did. You take the stress factor in, it's worth a lot more than that to me. So we've got a very excellent highway. And they've done a great job. That, I think, is not up for debate. What did we pay for that? We basically agreed to a contract that said part of Fast Tracks was guaranteeing that the bus service, which is our Fast Tracks, from Boulder to Denver had to go at least basically 45 miles per hour to meet the schedule that was guaranteed to the citizens who rode transit. And mind you, this is a transit. Faster is a transit bill. And when we passed it, it was basically to provide transit throughout the whole metropolitan area. So that's what Boulder got. And in return for that, a contract was negotiated with Plenary, and RTD was part of that contract, and part of that contract said, back to the point again, that the buses had to be able to get and keep to a schedule. We passed a bill last week, which Senator, I'll get fined again, Senator Cook and I sponsored to basically let the buses go on the shoulder so that if something occurred, they could go on the shoulder and meet their schedule. So we're doing everything we can to try to make bus rapid transit work. So I agree with my friend from Loveland and my friend from Louisville that this whole 2 and 3 conversation is a difficult one. But the fact of the matter is, as the fiscal note says, we have a contract. We're not starting from scratch. And that contract has penalties built into it. And basically, the head of CDOT has said, we can do a lot of things, but understand everything we do has a penalty. And what the fiscal note says, if you do what this bill says, and this fiscal note doesn't even deal with 2 to 3, by the way, this deals with the transponder, but if you do what this fiscal note says, and if you do what this amendment says, CDOT says that's going to cost us $4.5 million in a penalty per year. Now, we can argue whether the $4.5 million is the relevant number. Is it 3? Is it 6? But the fact of the matter is, if this were passed, it would require HPTE to sit down and renegotiate the contract with Plenary. And who has all the power? Plenary has a contract. And we're going to ask them to renegotiate it. And where is the power in that negotiations? I used to teach negotiations. And part of negotiations is trying to analyze the other side. Who's got all the tools? Unfortunately, we wouldn't have in that negotiation. So what CDOT and what HPTE has told us over and over again, fine, we can do this, but $4.5 million, if that's the number, is going to come out of their budget, so they can't use it for some project somewhere else in the state. So if we were to pass this, we basically are putting ourselves in the position of paying a yearly penalty that will come out of basically CDOT's budget, which we know is hard-pressed already. I'm not willing to do that. I am not willing to say that we should be paying a penalty. Should we have this conversation? Yes. Yes, we should. CDOT is dealing with the transponder issue by itself. They've basically said we could go, quote, to the Virginia model, which basically makes transponders free, as long as you only use them for HOV. I know that's not enough to satisfy everybody either. That we can probably deal with. In a vacuum, I would love to have this amendment passed, but we're not in a vacuum. We have a contract which has penalties built into it if we don't adhere to the contract. Now, there's no question in my mind that the January 1, 2017 date was an arbitrary date. It was done because Plenary, the contractor, had to have a date on which they could do their financial analysis. We met today with the mayors of Boulder and Louisville and with the chair of the county commissioners in Boulder, and they agreed if we could basically go to the engineering fix, i.e. if we could go to basically making this 2 to 3 only based on the bus times as opposed to an arbitrary date, they would favor that, and so would I. But unfortunately, that's not our prerogative at this time. That's not what the contract says. So I'd love to have this argument and discussion in a vacuum, but it's not a vacuum. We have a contract in place, like it or not. And I know my friend from Louisville that I share so many things with would love to go back and renegotiate that contract as if it didn't exist, but it does exist. At some level, I think we have to be pragmatists and understand where we are. So we have a contract. I'm going to have to say, please vote no on this because of the ramifications. That, to me, is where we are. In a vacuum, I would love to go back and do this, but as the sponsor, as my friend from Loveland said, this would basically make this contract, we would change the contract by requiring us to come back. Do we want to do that? That's our decision. And as CDOT has said, we can do whatever we want. There's a cost to it, and that's what the fiscal analysis is very, very clear in stating. So that's our choice. That's our choice. I am not willing to basically take $4.5 million in penalty out of the budget of CDOT, which will affect everybody in this room. That, to me, is not something that I'm willing to do. So I would ask you to vote no, and we need to have this conversation going on. There's no question about that. But I would ask you to vote no on this.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, got some interesting points to consider here. And one thought that comes to my mind is if it's a matter of paying for some penalties, maybe it should come out of the $100+ million fund that CDOT's using for their new buildings. That's not pavement. But I'd like to get more down to the real core of the matter, and that is, yeah, I agree. There have been some contracts struck that have been bad ideas. I think we have a common ground there that that the policy put in place to eliminate HOV from the state of Colorado, and that's what's coming. That's what's here to a large degree, but we'll seal the deal. You put it at 3+, and you'll find just this little tiny percentage of people that will ever fit into that. That was a bad policy. And I would remind the members of the Senate, Mr. Chair, that, well, Article 5 of the Colorado Constitution starts this way: the legislative power of the state shall be vested in the General Assembly, consisting of a Senate and a House of Representatives, both to be elected by the people. Are we to be held hostage by some poor decisions that have been made by some bureaucracies, or not? I don't believe that that's the criteria we should use. In my estimation, to eliminate HOV usage, which, by the way, the people of Colorado duly paid for the first system in place, and that has been co-opted into this tolling system. Are we to be held hostage by the bureaucracy, or are we to control and contain the bureaucracy? And when a bad decision is made, should the legislature assert its appropriate legislative powers and say, sorry, stop and redo this one? This amendment before us that we're discussing does put some teeth into that, and to say, look, you need to give due notice if you're going to change this policy to the General Assembly in an appropriate fashion. And my contention is, for all the arguments they'll make of, oh, well, you know, if you look through our contract here and find on page 37 down here in paragraph 58, there's this little line. You should have seen that because we sent that to you. I'm sorry, that doesn't fly, and that's why this amendment is before us on this bill, is to say this needs to be done properly and in order. We can't hide behind some contract that was struck behind some closed doors. The General Assembly needs to face up straight and square to major policy changes. And the contention within Senate Bill 123 is that a major policy change is being effectuated by regulation, and the intention is, let's stop and move through properly so that we, the people, can be represented adequately through their duly elected members of the General Assembly, not some bureaucracy. Yeah, is there going to be some undoing that'll have to occur? Yes. But in the overall scheme of things, I believe we need to defend the authority of the General Assembly and tell the bureaucracy when they make a mistake, it's not right, you need to redo this. Please support the amendment and the bill.
Senator Jones to Amendment 9.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the amendment, I'm supportive of the amendment. Members, don't let this happen to your constituents. Don't let this happen to your constituents. Don't let this happen to your constituents. We didn't know about it. We learned about it. My colleague from Boulder made a good case for why public-private deals are bad ideas. Because you can't change this now unless you pay a private company. That's what the conversation over the last few weeks has been. Let's go see what plenary can do. They did Mother May I. Can we please make the transponders free? Oh, that's going to cost you $1 million one time, $4.5 million a year. Can we put it off a year? That's going to cost you $4.5 million a year. Oh, we don't have the money, we can't change it. We let people go into a room without oversight, just gave them the power to negotiate a deal and sign a contract. A bureaucrat signed a contract, and we can't change it now. That's what the argument is. This amendment says, yes, we can change that. Now, I'm open to the idea of making this performance-based. If the US 36 lane slows down the buses enough, then you switch to a three-person carpool. Until then, we need to push back. CDOT, what they offered us yesterday was the so-called Virginia model. Now get this, okay? You've been driving in this lane in a two-person carpool for free for a long time. It's been promoted for generations to get into a carpool, a two-person carpool. They said, okay, you can have this is what we'll do for you. It's nothing about the carpooling, but you can have a free transponder if you never use it and switch it in the lane. Then we'll charge you the $15. Take it out of your 35 that's been put aside. Or if you go on E470 and Northwest Parkway, then it's no longer free again. How many people is that? That's why the revenue estimate's so doggone low. That's all they're willing to do. They also told us that, hey, in February of 2013, it was in a written document that we were going to do this. Guess when they changed it at the Transportation Commission? February of 2013. We learned about it on the Transportation Commission in an oversight hearing in January. We're saying, don't do that. And they said, we're doing it. It's part of the deal. We can't do the deal otherwise. CDOT, my experience with CDOT, unfortunately, has been that they think they know what's right, and they won't work with you. It's happened to me on the transparency bill a few years ago. They would do nothing until we wrote a letter from 14 legislators along the US 36 corridor. And then they got real. And then they said, okay, you can do a 35-year legislative approval. No deals over 35 years without legislative approval. Had it in writing, and then they said, no, we can't do that after all. I don't necessarily think this amendment's the right answer. I think it should be performance-based. But CDOT and a high-performance, how many do you guys know are high-performance transportation enterprises? Ever seen their hearing room? Ever been to the building at all? Not Arkansas? Some of my constituents were, and I got thrown out of the meeting. They aren't listening. They know what's best. They fixed it for us. In the conversation yesterday, I was told, well, you know, the mayors and commissioners along US 36 and the commuting solutions along 36, they're supportive of the current situation. So everybody's supporting it. And I said, well, okay, fine. Let's have two town halls, one in Westminster, one in Louisville, Boulder area, and see what happens. Oh, no, we've done our deal. This is a good deal. They know what'll happen. They know what'll happen, and they're not moving hardly at all. As my colleague from Loveland said, of a scale of 1 to 100, and you're trying to get to 50% or somewhere around there to negotiate, they're about 5%. They think they can blow the legislature off. They have us. They're going to charge us. Here's the table that they gave us, figuring out all the costs. That's what happens with public-private deals, folks. Once you're in, you're toast. 50 years. My great-grandkids will be living with this. 50 years. And now they won't let us change it. This amendment says, no, you need to pay attention to the legislature, not a cursory notice. You're making a huge policy change, and you didn't let us know. So for that reason, I ask for a yes vote on this amendment. Yeah, they're short of money. I definitely agree with them. They're short of money. They have big issues. Last time we raised the gas tax was 1989. I counted the votes with my friend Paul Schauer. It was a bipartisan effort. I was told by the Ledge Council it's about $2 billion worth of money it's gone to roads since that time. Through my actions, have proven that I support better transportation. But these public-private deals, folks, they take your power away. They take your constituents' powers away. So let's vote for this so CDOT gets real.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of the bill as well as Amendment 09. Colleagues, and to my friend, the Assistant Minority Leader, I want to read the declaration regarding the bill that was passed in 09. Concerning the improvement of the transportation system of the state and in connection therewith providing additional sources of funding for transportation. Friends, transportation does not mean just transit. And modifying the transportation planning process. Let's take a look, folks, at some numbers. What does transit miles represent? The transit miles that are driven in the United States represent a little over 1% of the total miles driven. What we've done here is we've signed on to basically an agreement that disenfranchises 99% of the people in the Metro Denver area. When we have a situation and we say we have to do everything to make sure that buses ride smoothly. However, if you have the money, if you have the green and you can afford it, maybe green's the wrong term today, everybody's got green, but if you can afford it, you'll be accepted. You'll be able to travel in these lanes. But now, not only do you have to have 2 people in the lane, now we're going to change the rules and you have to have 3 people in the lane. Friends, this body is responsible for making sure that that other 99% of the population that does not use transit is not totally disenfranchised by any kind of deal that's done, and not disenfranchised by changes that are made by CDOT. We need to make sure that we protect those folks, and we make sure that in a transportation system, that 99% that makes the bulk of the people is also taken care of by this deal. So I support the bill, and I support 09, and I would ask you to do the same.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate so much all the conversations we're having. Obviously, we can see that this is very complicated. It is not a quick fix, and it is something that we need to be addressing very carefully. As I've been listening and really thinking through, at this point, I'm the only person that has served on Transportation Committee and heard this bill in committee and heard the testimony. And so a couple of thoughts come to me. It's almost sounding like this is something like CDOT has just come up with this new idea and aha, let's just do this. 2 years ago, they came to TLRC and reported and talked about how the HOV lane was going to move from 2 to 3. What is CDOT's purpose? Why do we have CDOT? Their goal is to try to make roads, bridges safe, passable, and accessible for all people in Colorado and those that are coming to the state. It is apparent to me that that is the intent of one of the tools in the toolbox. So looking at HOV lanes, looking at tolls, looking at transit, looking at a broad scope of what are the different solutions for helping cars move. I know that I don't particularly enjoy sitting in traffic, watching my gas tank go down, unless I've got a really good book I'm listening to or some good music, but it's not something that most of us want to spend time doing. So another goal of CDOT is to reduce congestion, help cars keep moving, help people get where they need to go on time. This is one more tool in the toolbox. It was not something that was conjured up and kept a secret. It was brought forward to TLRC 2 years ago and talked about how this was going to be moving us in a different direction, because it was going to give people an opportunity to, again, keep the traffic moving. Second of all, when we look at the revenue for transportation, I don't think I need to remind all of us that we do not have an abundance of revenue for transportation. And so what we have said to CDOT and we have said to HPTE, you try to figure it out. Try to figure out how we are going to make the transportation accessible, affordable, and keep traffic moving. What's that going to look like? I am so proud of the fact that in a month we are going to be a city and a state that will make it available for people to go from Union Station to DIA and back. That opens up so much availability and reduces the amount of cars that will be on the highways. The other thing that I want to really stress is that we do have a choice. Nobody is forcing us to say you have to drive in the HOV lane. No one is saying this is the only pathway for you to go and the only way for you to get there. No one is making you do that. That is a choice you have. So you have a choice of driving in congested traffic. Let's just keep things the way they are. Let's just go backwards. Let's just remove this and just say, oh, we're going to just keep the congestion because we really like sitting in traffic. Let's not trust that CDOT has done studies and has looked at this. Let's just make sure that we all have better answers than those who have done the research. So that's one choice. Another choice is that you can use the transponder. Another choice is you can have 3 people in your car and drive in the HOV lane. Another choice is you can take the BRT, the Bus Rapid Transit. These are choices, my friends. This is what CDOT has done for us and for our constituents. It is not a one decision or one choice only. Look at the options that are out there. I'm very troubled that when we make a contract, that we want to go back and say, oh, well, we want to revisit this and let's start all over again. Because we've got $4.5 million we can waste. How many roads, how many bridges, how many opportunities to keep the traffic moving are we stifling by doing that? I know the intent of the sponsor is to try to be fair, to make sure that opportunities are given to all people at the same time. I understand that, and I agree with him. But I do want us to be very clear on what this amendment, Amendment 9, would do. It will break a contract, and any of us that have made contracts, whether we're building a house, whether we're buying a car, whatever kind of contract we sign, we know that there's a penalty. Is it more prudent for us as legislators to say, we think that's more important, and for us to pay the penalty, rather than we want to invest in making transportation more fluid throughout the state? We need to be very prudent. This year, I think we have all looked very carefully at what the fiscal notes are on all of our bills. I think this is one more thing and one more time. If this passes, we will probably need to have another fiscal note to see what the cost would actually be. But this is the prediction. Again, let me remind you, it is about choice. Choose to drive in the HOV lane, have 3 people. This has been studied nationwide. This is not just Colorado came up with this in a back room and decided, whoa, let's just do this. It's been studied nationwide to see how do we keep traffic moving. Second, use a transponder. Third, take BRT. 4, continue in the path that you're going. You have a choice. I have a choice. Make that choice one that is fiscally sound. Make that choice one that will give more people an opportunity to travel in less congested highways. With that, I urge a no vote on L009, and I'm sure that as we continue on and we continue talking about the bill, I will be happy to speak to that again. But I will assure you, TLRC was reported to from HPTE. This did not just pop in off the charts. This is not a new hit. This has been out there for 2 years at least. I urge a no vote on L009. Thank you.
Senator Holbert. Rumor is you have comments to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I rise in support of L009. I believe it helps to restore the power of the purse and accountability for the legislative branch. With state and federal gas tax funding the maintenance and construction of our roads and bridges, along with that 2009 legislation, which I believe is the underlying issue here with Senate Bill 123, the legislature has released itself from having that ability, that authority of the power of the purse. Constituents often ask when discussing the state budget, well, how much of the general fund is allocated to roads and bridges? And I have to explain, really none. And because we don't do that, we have lost the power of the purse. I see Amendment L009 as a reasonable step toward the requirement that CDOT, the executive branch, report back to us their intention if they move from that 2-vehicle to 3-vehicle requirement, and that they make that report while we're in session during this 120-day period each year. And I believe that that helps to restore the authority of the legislative branch. I believe that that helps to restore a very small step, but helps to restore our ability as representatives of the people when they ask, why did you make this policy change from 2 people to 3 people in the HOV lanes? At least we could explain, well, we didn't make that decision, CDOT made it. But with this report, we could explain why and when, and at least have some accountability that we were notified of it before. I understand opposition to the bill because I suppose those who might be opposed might have been in favor of the 2009 legislation. And I understand those who would support it because I would imagine those of us who support it, if we were here or not, we probably would have been against the 2009 legislation. I can understand the concerns over fiscal impacts of the bill, but on this amendment, it seems to me a very reasonable step towards transparency and accountability, and again, restoring the authority of the legislative branch. Ask for an aye vote on L009.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. Encourage aye vote on L009.
The motion before the body is the adoption of Amendment L009. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted to the bill. Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do appreciate everyone's kind attention to a very important matter. I simply renew my request that we support Senate Bill 123 and continue this very important discussion. And I trust that we will. Let me say one thing. I'm not against highway construction, nor the Colorado Department of Transportation. I believe they do have a very important role. Indeed, I've told some that I believe it's the first role of state government to ensure that we have a good transportation system in place. And I should hope that they would reevaluate this legislation as a means of drawing the legislature and the Transportation Commission closer together, so that we really might work in concert together rather than 2 separate orbs of governance. the people have vested in the legislature the authority, and that's what 123 is all about, is to reestablish that proper bond and direction in this important policy discussion. But overall, I want us to move forward and find better transportation solutions for the state of Colorado, because we need that for not just this generation but future generations. Please vote yes on 123.
Senator Heath.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just I'm not going to give another lengthy speech, but let me just try to put this in context one more time. I love all of these suggestions. It would be nice if we didn't have a contract. But when we do this, we're all voting to basically pay a penalty that's going to come out of CDOT's budget. Department of Transportation has made it clear we can do that. And if you're okay with that, then vote yes. If you're not, vote no, which I'm going to do.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one final point. We've heard this 4.5 million penalty. We're going to pay 4.5 million. It's going to cost $4.5 million, and that's an estimate that CDOT had given us. But if you look very carefully, what that means is, and this is quite logical, it makes sense to me, if you convert HOV use to tolling only, there is going to be more money raised through tolling. And it's the 4.5 million. That's, so understand this cost means that the people of Colorado will essentially no longer have the access to the lanes as HOV. They'll simply be paying the toll. That's the question before us. Thank you.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do want to make one comment about a part of Senate Bill 123 that I do support and am avidly working strongly for. Avidly, strongly. That's two really words. Anyway, that are advocating for our motorcycle riders. And that is the part that they will be able to drive in an HOV lane free. And that is a part of the bill that was just an amendment. That was the amendment that I really supported to the bill. I continue to support that. I will continue to be an advocate for our motorcycle riders and drivers. And that is the one part of the bill. If that's what 123 was, I'd support it. But it's all the rest of it that right now is not going, excuse me, in the direction that that I think we need to be going in terms of solving the congestion for overall challenges that we're facing for Colorado. Once again, I just want to remind us, we do have a choice. We have a choice of which lane we drive in. Choose the HOV, have 3 people in your car. Choose the transponder, and you pay that fee or that toll. Or drive in the regular lane, or take BRT. Those are choices that CDOT is working forward to help make the congestion less in Colorado and help the traffic keep moving and help people get where they need to go on time. Thank you so much, and vote no on Senate Bill 123.
President Cadman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to share a little bit of history on this, but I'm not going to belabor it, I promise. But it is a continuation of a conversation that me and my good friend from Boulder had Friday. Well, it was a one-sided conversation, but thank you for listening. It's been a frustration that's been building on this for years. It's been shared by a couple of you through the meetings that we've had to try to fix this along the way. And I've heard a constant response of, we didn't really know it would do that. I think that's accurate. High Performance Transportation Enterprise, creation, board, funds, powers and duties, limitations, reporting requirements, legislative declaration. I won't read the whole thing. It was an 84-page bill. Lest you wonder if it's pertaining to this legislation, it's why we're here. It is the intent of the General Assembly that the High Performance Transportation Enterprise created in this section actively seek out opportunities for public-private partnerships for the purpose of completing surface transportation infrastructure projects, and that this section be broadly construed to allow the transportation enterprise sufficient flexibility. be broadly construed. And I will tell you, they broadly construed their authority. And we heard multiple times at this microphone that that was so broadly construed it included keeping the people that were affected by this legislation out of the very room where the decisions were being made on their future. The very decisions that were being made about their future and the construction of these projects. And that's our responsibility. I appreciate the mea culpa. Thank you. We said this would happen, and it did. It did. I just want to share two things. Somebody, the distinguished, gentle lady from Aurora, stood here and said, we did this for them. We did this for them. I would suggest that we did this to them. To them. The people that are paying the price for this is something that we did. And actually, in 2009, with the passage of this legislation, if you were in this body in 2009 and you were a yes vote, I would suggest that you did this to them. You did this to them. And this is your chance to do something for them. Yes, there's going to be a penalty. But isn't the reality that they're paying that penalty now through the decisions that were made and the contracts that were construed because of that? It's a penalty that we are forcing on them. That's our responsibility. Saying you're sorry is one thing. Doing something about it is another. This is an opportunity, at least in this one case, to do something about it. And frankly, this issue needs continued work. This was considered at the time groundbreaking. I believe that term was used for this bill. It seemed appropriate at the time. Groundbreaking is true because what we did then was abdicate our authority, our responsibility to the people who sent us here. If you voted for this in 2009, this is a chance to take the responsibility for the ramifications of those decisions that have now come through these contracts. It's an opportunity to vote yes.
The motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 123 as amended. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and 123 is adopted. Mr. Majors, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 106?
Senate Bill 106 by Senator Holbert and Representative Salazar concerning measures to facilitate the efficient administration of Colorado laws governing campaign finance.
Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 106, the committee reports from State Veterans and Military Affairs and Appropriations.
To the State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In that committee, there was an amendment that offered some technical changes, but the substantial change can be found on page 2 of the committee report, lines 5 through 9, where the number of candidates for administrative law judge that would specialize in campaign finance was increased to 5 in the initial round of nominations. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? The motion before the body is the adoption of the State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee report to Senate Bill 106. All those in favor say aye. Aye. No? The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. To the Appropriations Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appropriations, there was an appropriation of $122,765 that comes from the Department of State Cash Fund. This bill will use the same dollars from the Department of State Cash Fund to pay for ALJs that would specialize in campaign finance issues. It is not a new appropriation, but just appropriating money in a different way. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Appropriations Committee report is adopted. To the bill, Senator Holbert.
Thank Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 106 is an attempt, I hope, in a bipartisan way, and I thank the House sponsor, Representative Salazar, for working together with the folks from the Secretary of State office and also groups outside the Capitol, like Common Cause and American Votes. Last year I was blessed to work with a diverse group to deal with a situation when a voter ends up with more than one voter ID. And we found a way to resolve those issues in a bipartisan way that had no opposition. And that has been our hope on Senate Bill 106. The idea here is that we recognize that people on both sides of the political aisle, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, unaffiliated voters, when they run for office at really any level of government up to our statewide offices of governor and secretary of state, attorney general, treasurer, and certainly including those 100 seats here in the General Assembly, that people encounter a very complex array of campaign finance law requirement reporting. When one files for office, that person takes on the responsibility of understanding the law and reporting correctly. But we also recognize that there are challenges to campaign finance reports and activities that bring candidates before administrative law judges from all across the political spectrum. And over the years, we've also recognized that the judgment, the ruling of administrative law judges who spend most of their time with things like workers' compensation claims, that the consistency of those rulings varies sometimes dramatically. The Secretary of State, again, through what has been an open and inclusive process, has proposed that rather than have ALJs, administrative law judges, that are housed at the Department of Personnel and Administration, who spend the vast majority of their time on things other than campaign finance, what if we could come up with a way to define a pool of administrative law judges who would specialize in campaign finance complaints? The need for those ALJs is rather limited compared to the other needs of ALJs. And originally the proposal was that we would move a body of ALJs, ideally I think 3, over to the Secretary of State's office, and then we realized, no, we can't do that. They would really need to stay at DPA. So we restructured that funding so that the Secretary of State would have the opportunity to define that pool, pay for that pool, and still have a body of ALJs that would specialize and be more familiar with campaign finance law in order to have more consistency in those rulings. So as a person from Party A does something wrong and then gets a ruling from one administrative law judge, that when candidate B from a different party does something very similar, that he or she would see a very similar ruling from that ALJ. That is what we're trying to accomplish with 106, is consistency in those rulings, regardless of party affiliation, regardless of experience in the political process, but to give candidates a better opportunity to understand what's required of them, and if they make a mistake, intentionally or unintentionally, that the judgment against them is consistent. One of the things that we talked about in committee was how many people, if we were to develop this, how many administrative law judges should be considered, and we have expanded that to a larger pool. One of the things that we've talked about is, should we try to find some three-person panel, a Republican, a Democrat, and an unaffiliated voter, to bring balance? And the discussion, I think, from all sides is that has proven to be less than successful in environments like redistricting and reapportionment. We've made those kinds of attempts in other places. So the proposition here is to not try to develop that neutrality with a 3 or more person panel, but to simply appoint someone who has been a partisan Republican and a partisan Democrat for a period of time and are known to be that, and allow those 2 people to vet the ALJs and make recommendations to the Secretary of State, understanding that they must agree, both of them, on one of those candidates. I see wisdom in that because it exemplifies, it uses the model of our joint budget committee that right now, because of the split chambers, is split equally between the House and the Senate and equally between the parties. And we see our joint budget committee working together to find right solutions, proper solutions, the best solutions given our circumstances. The next question is the selection from that list of 5, and that does fall to the Secretary of State. So we have had discussions about if we have one Republican and one Democrat having to agree to come up with this list of 5, then can both sides of the political aisle, can both chambers take certainty that our current Secretary of State will make the right decisions to identify a pool of ALJs that will actually take up this work and hear campaign finance cases on behalf of all of the candidates in Colorado. And I understand, we have had discussions on this point before too, that some on one side of the aisle might have more concern about our current Secretary of State because of his political affiliation, and that at some time in the future that might change and the concern might switch to the other side of the political aisle. I understand those things. I understand. If we have a better way, I'm willing to hear it. But I'm very proud to stand with Representative Salazar, who I believe have not sponsored a bill together, and we are trying to find that way. We are trying in a bipartisan way, a bicameral way, to find that solution so that candidates in our state can have more reliance on the administrative law judges and the penalties involved in campaign finance violations. Ask for an aye vote on Senate Bill 106.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, members, picture yourself talking to a friend and saying, hey, you know, my treasurer, who's a volunteer in my campaign, filed a report late, and I owe about $1,000, and then the Secretary of State put all these extra fines on that. So I'm going to go to an administrative law judge, but I learned that the administrative law judge works for the Secretary of State. Your friend says, no way. How are you going to get a fair shake there? And you say, well, my understanding is that these ALJs who came from Department of Personnel didn't know their stuff. The rulings were inconsistent. This is complex law. And so they wanted to have their own ALJs in Secretary of State. They used to have them in Department of Personnel. And your friend replies to you, well, why don't they keep them in the Department of Personnel where there's no appearance of conflict and just train them on campaign law, 2 or 3 of them? Why not just train them so you have consistent rulings and you get a fair shake and you don't go in front of an ALJ who seems to have a vested interest in ruling on the side of the Secretary of State? And if they don't, it certainly seems that they appear to. Well, that's what this bill does. It says, we're going to fix this problem of complexity and inconsistency by moving the people instead of training the people that are already there in Department of Personnel. I agree there's probably a problem. This bill's the wrong solution. And just think, you know, right now I'd go to the Secretary of State, they're in a different party. In the future, it'll be the other way around. That's a partisan office. They don't need their own ALJs. What we need is Department of Personnel to train an adequate number of people on election law so that we have a neutral third party making a determination. Because isn't that what you want from a judge? I'd ask for no vote on the bill.
Senator Ulibarri. There's an amendment on the desk. Mr. Majors, will you please read Amendment 3?
Amendment L003, Senate Bill 106 by Senator Ulibarri, amend print bill, strike everything below the enacting clause, substitute section 1.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L003.
To the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I want to rise to have an important conversation about this bill. I'm going to pull out the bill so I can read you the title. The title is Concerning Measures to Facilitate the Efficient Administration of Colorado Laws Governing Campaign Finance. So, colleagues, in front of you, you have an amendment to ensure that we can have the efficient administration of laws governing campaign finance, specifically by enacting a public financing of election system here in the state of Colorado. For those of you who've been paying attention to the presidential election, two candidates, one on the Democratic side, one on the Republican side, have been gaining traction with this conversation, which is we need to take big money out of politics. If we want to ensure the fair and efficient implementation of our campaign finance laws, then we should take out private interest from the administration of financing of our elections. I'm going to read through this because I think it's important and really want to have this conversation here on the floor with such a broad title. What we have here is what I'm calling the Clean Elections Act. It starts with a legislative declaration that says, political campaigns for candidates for the General Assembly have become very expensive. As a result, many qualified residents of the state are financially unable to seek election to the General Assembly, and the cost of conducting political campaigns forces many candidates for state legislative office to spend an inordinate amount of time raising campaign funds. What we've seen in this election cycle, and this goes to point B, is that the people of the state are concerned that special interests exercise a disproportionate level of influence over the political process. The surest way to offset this influence is to ensure that candidates are elected to public office backed by a meaningful level of public and grassroots support. Citizen interest, participation, and confidence in the integrity of the electoral process are lessened by excessively long and expensive political campaigning. So full or partial public financing of campaigns for state legislative offices conditioned on a sufficient amount of grassroots support will level the playing field among candidates, increase citizen participation in the electoral process, increase the supply of qualified candidates able to run for state legislative office, limit the time candidates spend soliciting contributions, reduce the pressure on state legislators to respond to and provide access to large contributors, and facilitate the efficient administration of laws governing campaign finance. For those of you who are looking at this amendment, if you go to page 2, line 5 through 13, when public financing of elections is available, the administration of laws addressing campaign finance is made more efficient because the underlying rules governing the system are simpler and easier to understand and follow, leading to a system of financing candidates that is more transparent and accountable, fewer public and private resources are consumed seeking or protecting against maximum legal advantage, and the integrity of the source of monies financing such campaigns is preserved and made secure. Colleagues, that's why this amendment, L003, is incredibly necessary and meets the very broad bill title that is in front of us. What's proposed here is a public financing of election system that ensures we have access to public funds for those who choose to take special interest money out of their campaigns. The way this is set up, it creates an enterprise fund because what we know is that the financing of elections is actually a private endeavor currently. That's how things work. Businesses pay money because they want to incur a certain benefit or privilege. By taking money out of that system, guess what? We can have a more efficient administration of campaign finance laws. The reason I set up an enterprise fund is that we have to have the funds that come in to this clean election system to make sure that we have the ability to pay. And the source of the revenue for the public financing system would come from a 10% fee paid by the lobbyists who are spending millions of dollars to influence our votes every single day. In 2014, 2015, in that fiscal year, lobbyists reported spending over $38 million. Sorry, in 2014, 2015 fiscal year, lobbyists reported spending $38,466,761.18 to influence us as state legislators. There were 670 registered lobbyists in that year, outnumbering us nearly 7-1. Colleagues, we can more efficiently administer our campaign finance laws when we take the private interest out of it. That's why this Amendment L003 is so incredibly important, and why we need to actually stand up and honor the intent of the state constitution. Voters a few years ago approved a state constitutional amendment to try and get special interest money out of our elections. This is following their will. Colleagues, I respectfully urge a yes vote on L003.
Senator Holbert, I understand you want to speak in favor of this as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, actually, I will ask, or will applaud the effort of the amendment sponsor to go in a direction that he believes in. It is certainly within the bill title, but a different direction that I had hoped to advance in Senate Bill 106. Look forward to working with Representative Salazar in the House to try to find a way to bring consistency in decisions made by ALJs. The prior speaker, Senator from Louisville, had made the point that housing these ALJs at the Department of Personnel Administration, that I guess operates under the partisan leadership of our governor, but providing that education and leaving them there at DPA might be a good solution. And that's actually one of the things that Representative Salazar and I are talking to the Secretary of State with. So I believe that there's still a good solution on the horizon for Senate Bill 106, but do ask respectfully for a no vote on L003.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of L003, and the point I want to make is right at the beginning in the legislative declaration, where it talks about that many qualified residents of the state are financially unable to seek election, and the cost of conducting political campaigns going up, and the inordinate amount of time raising campaign funds. And on the surface, I think a lot of people would say, well, you know, that's what politics is about. That's kind of where we are these days. But here in Colorado, with our Western freedom, Western liberty mentality that we have here, we are very proud in Colorado of what we call our citizens legislature. We only meet 120 days out of the year. We're not down here year-round. We don't get paid a full year's salary. And we truly are a part-time legislature. And it really fits into this definition of what's called a citizens legislature. That's why I think L003 really gets to the heart of what we believe in here in Colorado, our values as Coloradans, and allowing this discussion around public financing for elections, making sure that you don't have to be wealthy and well-connected in order to represent your community, that you can come down here to the legislature, represent your community for 2 years or 4 years or 8 years, and you can actually be one of the people. You can actually fit our definition of a Colorado citizens legislator. I ask for an aye vote on L003.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the adoption of Amendment 3. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Noes have it. Amendment 3 is lost. To the bill, Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, ask for an aye vote on Senate Bill 106. Let's give the House an opportunity to take this up and see if we can find a way to thread this needle. Ask for an aye vote.
The motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 106. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 106 is adopted. Mr. Majors, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 131?
Senate Bill 131 by Senator Tate and Representatives Pabon and Willett, concerning the management of assets for individuals in connection therewith, clarifying that the fiduciary's authority is suspended after a petition for the fiduciary's removal is filed, protecting an adult ward or protecting a person's right to an attorney post-adjudication and preventing a fiduciary from paying court costs or fees from an out of an estate after receiving notice of an action for the fiduciary's removal.
Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 131 and the Judiciary Committee report.
To the committee report, Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the committee, we passed one amendment, and that was specifically to amend the bill title. The bill title had an error that did not reflect the bill language within the bill, nor the bill intent, and specifically had to do with the timing of a fiduciary's removal being upon notification to the fiduciary, not just the filing of the petition.
Motion before the body is the adoption of the judiciary report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. To the bill, Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate Bill 131 is a cleanup bill that's been the legal community has been working on. It's a cleanup bill in the probate code and specifically accomplishes three things in terms of clarifying what's going on in the judiciary system and the court system. As I mentioned before, and this is germane to the amendment that was passed in the committee, when a fiduciary or a petition is filed for a fiduciary's removal, the fiduciary is then notified, and at that point, the fiduciary's abilities and authority in terms of managing a trust, for example, is suspended at that time. Secondly, the bill clarifies that a ward has a right to an attorney post-adjudication of a case in probate. And lastly, an important fix, and this was something that in terms of existing statutory language has been confusing, a fiduciary is now prevented via this bill from paying court costs or fees out of an estate after receiving notice of an action for the fiduciary's removal. Again, important cleanup items, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We heard this bill in committee, and I rise in support of Senate Bill 131. But I did have one question for the bill sponsor, and I apologize I didn't catch this during the committee report. I thought Amendment L005 had passed, and I did not see that in the committee report.
Senator Woods.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I rise. I'm a quasi-support of this bill. There was one other amendment that we were trying to get on, and I just want to explain this policy briefly, and I'm going to work with the House sponsors and try to move it over there. I'm not going to be a no vote on the bill because of this, but there's another piece of this that's really important to those people that I've been working with this summer who are in the situation where they are under a fiduciary's care. What we were trying to do was get some additional language in here so that a neighbor, a community member, somebody who's familiar with the ward could raise these concerns with the court. And so the bar came back and said, well, you just got Nosy Nancy down the street who wants everybody's grass cut the same height. And I said, no, I want Loving Laura across the street who's been mowing the grass, shoveling the snow, shopping for the groceries. And this is a real-life example from my district, my neighbor. So if I was the only one in the community who knew that there was a concern and that maybe the ward was being taken advantage of by the fiduciary, I would want the right to go to the court and have the court hear my concerns and raise the issue. So these amendments were not put on in the committee. I understand why, and I'm going to work with the sponsors in the House and see if we can get some of these amendments put on there. But there is a concern out there. How do we keep Nosy Nancy out of the business and allow Loving Laura into the business of a protected person? If somebody in the community knows that a ward is being abused or a fiduciary is not fulfilling their role, they should No, no, no disrespect intended to the good senator from Aurora. It is just that nosy Nancy thing came from the bar, not from me, so I do apologize for that. But anyway, it's a concern I've got, so I'm going to be a no vote on the bill today. I'll be a no vote on thirds, and this is the reason why, and then hopefully we can work on it in the House. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 131? Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move Senate Bill 131 lay over to the end of the general order second reading of bills calendar.
You've heard the motion to move Senate Bill 131 to the end of second reading calendar. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. 131 will be laid over. Mr. Majors, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 133?
Senate Bill 133 by Senator Tate and Representatives Pabon and Willett, concerning the transfer of property rights upon the death of a person in connection therewith, including inherited individual retirement accounts and inherited Roth individual retirement accounts as property exempt from levy and sale under a writ of attachment or writ of execution, clarifying determination of heirship proceedings, appropriating and enacting portions of the Uniform Power of Appointment Act.
Majority Leader Shuffle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee lay over Senate Bill 133 to March 18th.
You've heard the motion to lay over Senate Bill 133 until March 18th. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 133 will be laid over to March 18th. Mr. Majors, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 131?
Senate Bill 131 by Senator Tate and Representatives Pabon and Willett, concerning the management of assets of individuals and in connection therewith, clarifying that a fiduciary's authority is suspended after a petition for the fiduciary's removal was filed, and protecting the adult ward of, or protect a person's right to an attorney post-adjudication, preventing a fiduciary from paying court costs or fees from an out-of-state estate after receiving notice of an action for the fiduciary's removal.
Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of my colleagues mentioned that she thought an amendment had been passed during the committee. And in fact, it had been. It's on the committee report that we just had previously accepted. I just neglected to mention that component in discussing the committee report. And so I just want to let the body know that the concern expressed by my colleague is noted. The committee report reflects what was agreed to in the committee, and I just ask for an aye vote on the bill.
Senator Tate, will you move your bill again, please?
I move Senate Bill 131.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 131? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 131. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 131 is adopted. Majority Leader Shuffle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee rise and report.
You've heard the motion to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The committee will rise and report. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. You guys gotta keep us on the phone longer so I don't get because then these things. That's how bad it is.
Good job.
Thank you.
The Senate will come back to order. Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee has had a number of bills under consideration. I move the committee report.
There is an amendment. Mr. Majors, would you please read Committee of the Whole Amendment? I was going to say after the committee report, will you please read the amendment?
March 17, 2016, Mr. President, the committee whole brings reports that in consideration the following attached bills. Being second reading thereof, makes the following recommendations around Senate Bill 123 as amended, Senate Bill 106 as amended, Senate Bill 131 as amended, passed on second reading in order and gross based on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 133 laid over until March 18, 2016, retaining its place on the calendar.
Mr. Majors, would you please read Amendment 1?
Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 106.
Senator Gilberry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment 1.
To the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This just indicates that Amendment L003 to Senate Bill 106 did pass.
Is there further discussion? Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I was listening very closely up there. It was very clear to me that that bill did not pass. The amendment did not pass.
Senator Hill, that's $5 for each Mr. Chair reference, so that's $10. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment would dramatically change the direction of the bill. I believe it would fit under the title, but do ask for a no vote, and let's stay the course on Senate Bill 106 and see if we can find a way to bring more consistent rulings to ALJs.
Is there further discussion? Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. President. And it's unfortunate that some of my colleagues are getting fined because we are a citizens' legislature, after all.
$5.
And as I mentioned before, I do think that this amendment is important. Here in Colorado, we have a tradition of people stepping up and serving, whether it's in the lower chamber of the House or the much more dignified upper chamber here in the Senate. We do have a long tradition of folks who are not the wealthy or well-connected of serving here, but it's becoming increasingly more difficult for the typical person in our communities to come down here and serve. I ask for an aye vote on this amendment. Actually, yes, an aye vote on the amendment. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also ask for an aye on this.
$10.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also ask for an aye, and I'm sure you're with me now that you've done that on this amendment. And I would just say on St. Patrick's Day, if you're going to go green, you better stay clean. And this Clean Elections Act is a good thing to vote for. Because if you talk to your constituents about money and politics, you will get an earful. And so this is a good way to get at that. So I ask for a yes vote.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of the Committee of the Whole Amendment 1. Are there any no votes? Mr. Majority Leader? Senator Hill? Senator Tate? Senator Lundberg? Senator Crowder? Senator Marble? Senator Woods? Senator Neville? Senator Holbert? Senator Lambert? Senator Scott? Senator Roberts? Senator Sonnenberg? Senator Baumgardner? Senator Martinez-Humenick? Senator Cook? Senator Grantham? Please add the President. With 17 ayes, 18 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 is lost. We are now back to the approval of the report of the Committee of the Whole. Is there further discussion? Are there any no votes?
Division.
The division is not in order. That will be $5. We do not do a division when we are sitting as the Senate. The votes are recorded. Education costs money. Today it's $5. With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, and $5 coming, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 123 as amended, Senate Bill 106 as amended, Senate Bill 131 as amended, passed on second reading, ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 133 laid over until March 18th and retaining its place on the calendar. Majority Leader Shuffle.
Thank you, Mr. President. This time I move that the Senate proceed out of order for a brief, albeit critically important moment of personal privilege by Senator Garcia.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate will proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege granted to Senator Garcia. Senator Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I want to take just a few seconds to recognize the new Pueblo West, the new 4A State High School Championships, Pueblo West High School. They have patiently been enjoying this debate on second readings. And want to just share with you that they won over Valor Christian on Saturday, 70-51. It's places them, their record this season was 25-3. So an outstanding job. I want to recognize their coach, Bob Tyler, Doug McGraw, Robert Tyler, assistant coach, and Chance Tyler. Pueblo West, great job. Congratulations.
Consideration of resolutions. Mr. Majors.
Senate Resolution 3 by Senators Cadman and Stedman concerning the ascertainment of a quorum immediately after the Senate is called to order by the presiding officer.
President Cadman.
Thank you, Madam President. We move Senate Resolution 3. Colleagues, this is a rule issue that we talked about the other day. We are not asking to change the rules, but we are asking is to change the order. I asked my good colleague to join me so we could call this the Kumbaya Nostalgia Tour Point 2, in addition to Senate Bill 16. As we mentioned the other day, we had to change the rules up a little bit, and we found a conflict, and I think the Senate has been in conflict for quite a while. As you will recall, we have had special guests recite the pledge for us. We had Peggy Wortham, we had Christian Glassignon, we had Seth King, and at those points in our program, because of our other rules, we have to request permission to waive the rules. However, that requires a vote, and a vote requires a quorum, and a quorum requires that we have a roll call. So this reorders the order of business while not changing the rules so that we were actually in compliance with the quorum protocol and our other rules. And I appreciate a long-standing colleague who has been a rule monger, some would call him, who knows the rules well and has been an incredible asset for maintaining years of history and decorum in this chamber.
Senator Stedman.
Thank you, Madam President. And colleagues, I ask for your aye vote for this resolution. This is a very simple rule change that, paraphrased, says that as soon as the President gavels us to order in the morning, we will then have roll call and establish a quorum. And that is all that it does, but that enables us to then make decisions from that point on about whether we would like to suspend the rules so that we may have a special guest lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. This is a little different than the approach the House of Representatives has taken to this issue, but I think it's very appropriate. It's quite common sense to say before we start voting on things, we should first have roll call and establish the presence of a quorum. So I'd ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? See, Senator Johnston.
I would just like to add for some of my friends in the chamber who I've noticed need to use that extra 60 seconds of the pledge to get here before roll call. You may need to adjust your morning schedule accordingly to make sure you now get here for roll call before the pledge. Just wanted to update you of that.
I was thinking, Senator Johnson, you just wanted to make us look at your jacket. Okay. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Resolution 1. Are there any no votes? Okay, Senate Resolution 3. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 35 aye, 0 no, and 0 absent or excused, Resolution 3 is passed. Co-sponsors. With Senator Guzman, Senator Tate, Senator Martinez-Humenic, Senator Grantham, Senator Good-Looking Jacket Johnston, Senator Newell, Senator Jones, Senator Lundberg, Senator Kafalis, Majority Leader Scheffel, Senator Todd, Senator Garcia, Senator Holbert, Senator Scott, Senator Heath, please, Senator Merrifield, Senator Marble, Senator Lambert, Senator Hodge. Please add the president.
Would the Secretary please print the co-sponsors of the previous resolution and find all those who are not represented on there? Consideration of House amendments to Senator, Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move the balance of the calendar lay over to March 18th.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The balance of the calendar will lay over until March 18th. Announcements. Senator Stedman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Colleagues, we have some special, thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, we have some special guests that have joined us today in the chamber. And I suspect you've noticed that we have representatives from the Deaf-Blind Task Force that are here today, along with their interpreters. And they have been observing our work here on the Senate floor this morning. They're going to move across the street and observe the work of the Joint Budget Committee for the rest of the day. This group made a presentation to the Joint Budget Committee a couple months ago about the work of the Deaf-Blind Task Force and some recommendations that they have for us to consider about how the state of Colorado might do more to provide assistance and resources for people who are both deaf and blind in our state. And it's something we're going to be talking about this afternoon. I want you to help me welcome them here, and just know that this is a segment of a community of people with disabilities that has been a little invisible in our state for too long, and it's really wonderful that they're here present in our Senate chamber this morning. Please help me welcome them.
Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. President. During the Civil Air Patrol Day, I invited everybody to sign up to go fly with Civil Air Patrol. If you would like to do that and haven't signed up, see me immediately after the proceedings today, and I'll get you on the list. Thank you.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, you had on your desk this morning an invite from Colorado Mountain College. Just wanted to bring attention 2 points on it. One, that it is April 1st. They wanted to give everyone plenty of advance notice to get this on your calendar. But they also have made a very concerted effort to host it in the Capitol this year, hoping that more of you will stop by to learn more about this great institution. So please add this to your calendar, and we will see you Friday, April 1st at the Old Supreme Court Chamber. Thank you.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, colleagues. Once again, I have two announcements. One, you received on your desks this morning a reception Monday morning for Women's History Month resolution. We'll be hearing that on the floor in the Senate, and there's a reception in the Barney Ford room over in the Speaker's Suite at 9:30. The second announcement that I have is all of you received a wonderful bag this morning, and if you have not opened it yet, please take time to look at all of the wonderful goodies inside here. This is sponsored by the Colorado Advisory Council for Persons with Disabilities. This is a group that has been very formidable about bringing an awareness of disabled parking, for sure. My awareness was raised this fall, or this winter, when I was not able to drive and not able to walk and was really confined to a wheelchair for a period of time. That was temporary. There are many others who are currently permanently disabled. And so what this does is it brings about an awareness of, think of me, think of the person who really cannot get out and walk a long distance, that those parking areas are designated specifically for those who are handicapped, disabled, and challenged and need to have that access. The council is involved with printing and distributing these signs, think of me. And our own Chris Hines, who maybe you have met down here as a strong advocate, I've worked with him, have tremendous respect for him, is actually in the chamber, and want to give him a thank you publicly for being an advocate, not just for himself, but for many others. And so again, the bag is a reminder. The number of people who say, well, I just parked there for a second, I just needed to run in for a quick errand. Someone else who's waiting and needs to park there may not be able to go and take care of what they need to do. So if you see Chris in the hallway, please thank him and stop and think and be grateful and be thankful that you don't need to use and we don't need to use those spaces on a regular basis. So God bless you, Chris. Thank you for bringing these to us today.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. President and colleagues. I just wanted to remind you that tomorrow is Hungry for Change Day at the Capitol. This day is presented by Hunger Free Colorado, and they work to eliminate hunger for our kids here in the state of Colorado. There is a legislative breakfast from 8 to 9 in the Old Supreme Court Chamber tomorrow from 8 to 9 before we get started on the floor here. I would encourage you to come meet with folks. We'll have constituents from our areas from faith-based organizations, anti-hunger groups, healthcare groups, and child advocates. So please join us at 8 o'clock tomorrow to talk about hunger.
Senator Baumgartner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, on your desk you would have probably found the Sportsman's Caucus Luncheon, which is today from noon to 1, where they serve those really fantastic hot dogs. Please, it's down in room 112, down in the basement. May I proceed, Mr. President? Thank you, Mr. President. Don't forget about bond fees. That's going to be here Monday, parked right outside. If you have not signed up, contacted my office, please do so today, as we need to get that list over to the House to where they can get on a time schedule. Also, the Colorado Craft and Cocktail Tasting Legislative Reception at the Governor's Mansion this afternoon, beginning at 4:30. Thank you.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. As if you didn't get enough food to eat yesterday on Ag Day, Colorado Corn will have their lunch today. You've all received invitations for that. We'd love to see you across the street at Scottish Rite at noon.
Further announcements. Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. In case you want to engage the subject of animals, but not in a culinary subject, the Claw Caucus is meeting today, and the topic of discussion is training dogs. And there's been some legislation here related to training dogs and comfort dogs and what role dogs should have in our goings about during the day. So anyways, please join us at the Claw Caucus. Thank you.
What's for lunch?
12 o'clock lunch over in LSB. Thank you.
Further announcements. Senator Marble.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tomorrow, upon adjournment, the water policy briefing in House Room 112. It's a bipartisan House and Senate sponsored lunch regarding groundwater levels that are rising from Denver to Julesburg and the resulting economic impact to the state of Colorado, damage to property rights, and to the doctrine of prior appropriation. We've got 6 wonderful speakers lined up. Come get a lunch, drop in here, just be introduced. You don't have to stay for the whole thing, but it'd be wonderful to get to know some of these wonderful people who are coming to engage us tomorrow on water policy. Thank you.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, committees will be meeting as scheduled in the calendar, with this one exception. Senate Bill 148 will not be heard in education today.
Senator Woods.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, if I could draw your attention to the screen. Dwight D. Eisenhower once said, "The proudest human that walks the earth is a free American citizen." And one of these proud citizens who fought, thank you, Mr. President, who fought during World War II to ensure that each of us sitting here this morning also walks the earth as free American citizens is Sergeant Joseph Gorski, who turns 98 years old today. Sergeant Gorski is an American hero whose service during World War II with the 402nd Bomber Squadron resulted in these medals: the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Air Medal with 3 oak leaf clusters, the Good Conduct Medal, and the Victory Medal of World War II in the European, the African, and the Mid-Eastern campaigns. Sergeant Gorski was the tail gunner, and he flew with distinction. Sergeant Gorski currently lives in Arvada, and I'm proud to call him a constituent. We had invited Sergeant Gorski to come down this morning to celebrate his birthday and do the pledge with us. He declined because he didn't want to miss breakfast. It's a reasonable reason. So I've asked that this photo be put up on the screen so that you can meet an American hero. Joe is pictured here today with the Colorado flag that we presented to him. It's a Colorado flag that had flown over the Capitol, this very historic building we get the privilege to work in, and the certificate that comes with the flag that's provided by Senate Services. Sir, I know you're listening today online, and we thank you for your service. We owe you a debt we can never repay. And we join with General George Patton, who said, "It is foolish and wrong to mourn the men who died in WW2. Rather, we should thank God that such men lived." Sergeant Gorski, we indeed thank God that brave and courageous men like yourself chose to sacrifice so much to protect and defend the freedoms we enjoy. And on behalf of myself and the Colorado Senate, happy birthday, sir, and may God bless you, and may God bless America.
Sergeant Gorski, happy birthday. Colleagues, let's say thank you for his service. We're all coming over to have cake with you. Are there further announcements? Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleague, we will be leaving the desk open. Although you don't need to return, we'll be reading over some bills, resolutions, et cetera. Mr. President, move the Senate recess to 1 p.m. today.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate will stand in recess until 1 p.m.